This is the Floridaville. Get to know the people behind the Florida names you know. I'm your host, Rosanna Catalano. On this episode, we get to know State Legislator Emily Slosberg. She's an attorney, daughter, sister, friend, and survivor. When she was just 14 years old, she survived a horrific car accident that took the lives of her friends and twin sister Dory. This event has impacted the path of her life, mentally and professionally. She opens up with us on her hopes to protect others from traffic tragedies and how she wants to help people living with post-traumatic stress disorder. We are in Florida's capital city, and our guest today is State Representative Emily Slosberg. Welcome to the show. You represent District 91 in the Florida House of Representatives. Can you share with us what cities you represent?
I represent Boca Raton, Delray Beach, and Boynton Beach, located in Palm Beach County.
What committees do you serve on in the House of Representatives, and tell us the types of issues you deal with in each committee?
Okay, so I sit on Health and Human Services Committee, which deals with a lot of healthcare issues. State Affairs Committee over Agriculture and Transportation Subcommittee. So everything that goes through transportation and agriculture comes up to State Affairs. Justice Appropriations deals with the dollars for Florida Department of Law Enforcement, our courts, our clerk of courts, our prosecutors, our public defenders, and Gaming Control Subcommittee. It's about controlling gambling in the state of Florida.
You've been serving the public for several years now. What is your favorite part of the job?
My favorite part of the job is actually getting stuff accomplished, getting legislation passed, such as the texting and driving bill. You start out filing the legislation, filing the bill. Sometimes ideas or policy bills have to be filed many times before they actually start moving. And sometimes it can take years. A good part of it is actually seeing the legislation get passed through the process.
I know you're passionate about that texting and driving bill. Can you explain to our listeners what that bill was?
Yeah, so we have a ban on texting while driving, but it was only as a secondary offense, meaning you couldn't get pulled over for actually texting and driving. So law enforcement can see a person at their car texting, but can't pull that person over unless they ran a stop sign or ran a red light, did some other traffic offense they could be stopped for. What this did was it allowed law enforcement to actually pull over a driver who's texting, who they see texting. And it's a big deal because now it's actually enforceable. When you know you can be pulled over, it has an effect. People will put it down.
Your father held your legislative seat before you. What prompted you to run for office?
Well, but what actually prompted me to run was filing this bill. I lost my twin sister when I was 14 years old. The anniversary is actually February 23rd. So it was February 23rd, 1996. So we're coming up to an anniversary. I was almost killed. 4 of our friends were killed, and she was also killed next to me. And there's nothing like waking up in a hospital bed, not knowing where your twin sister is, and not knowing really what even happened to you, having trees growing out of my hair. My leg was broken, my lungs were punctured, pelvis fractured, and on a respirator. And I couldn't even speak when I remember waking up in the hospital. And I said, I remember writing on my dad's hand because I couldn't speak, "Where's Dory?" It's my twin sister. And he said to me, he actually was the first time he was at a loss for words. He couldn't even tell me. He hands me the newspaper, and I read in the newspaper that my twin sister's dead. And getting out of that hospital, I said to my dad, how do we go on? Because I don't want to go on. I shared a room with her. I shared a bed with her. I was with her every second of the day, unless we were at school. And he said, "Emily, it's what we do after a tragedy that determines whether it remains just a tragedy. We're going to make sure others don't go through this." So that's exactly what I'm doing. I ran for office to make our roads safer.
I'm sorry to hear that. What advice did your dad, Irv Slosberg, offer to you when you were running for office?
He gave me some really, really good advice. One thing is the importance of having a team at my district. And I have a really good team. I represent the second oldest demographic in the state. So my district secretary, Ed, he's like 86 years old, and he's a community leader, president of various clubs in the community, and very wise man, and really understands the issues. So I made sure to follow that advice to get a good team in my office.
For our listeners that have never held elected office, can you share with us what you find is the hardest part of your job representing parts of Palm Beach County?
Yeah. One of the hardest things to deal with is Constituents come in all the time and call my cell phone. I just got off the phone with somebody yesterday. Sometimes the legislation is from a constituent's idea or something that happened to them in their life or a loss of their son. And this just happened yesterday. She was just very frustrated that the legislation that we filed in honor of her son wasn't moving. Another legislator filed it last session. I filed it this session. And it's just not moving through the process. It kind of gets frustrating. Sometimes just need to vent because it takes time. Good policy, anything that, it just takes time. It could take years. And I think it becomes a little challenging to kind of explain that to constituents who are expecting the bill to pass or be farther along the process.
Yeah, it's personal to them.
Oh, absolutely.
You are a Democrat in a legislature with a Republican majority. What characteristics of yours do you think best help you to navigate this and work across the aisle?
Pick your battles. Choose your battles wisely. I think is an important thing. Just making friends, building relationships with the other side, the other party, really establishing those relationships, helping out, and knowing where to just pick your battles, I think is important.
I did some research on you before your visit today, and it looks like the year 2019 brought some challenges your way, and you used these challenges to shine a spotlight on post-traumatic stress disorder, which is something most people keep in the dark. Can you share with us, to the extent you're comfortable, what happened and how you are using this experience to help others, how you're using the advice of your dad?
Yeah. So, right after the crash, my parents had forced me to go see a psychologist when I was 14. And one of the first psychologists I had seen, I just started telling the story to, and the psychologist started hysterically crying. And I said to myself, how am I ever going to get help? This is not, this is the help that I'm going to get. And really the trauma of being the only walking survivor of the backseat of a disastrous crash. There's going to be effects, not just physically, but also emotionally. And probably, going to law school was easy. Doing a lot of passing the Florida bar, studying for the bar was easy. But when you have to take a look at yourself and kind of sit down with somebody else and in a mental health setting, most people don't want to do. I didn't want to touch pain. I just didn't want. It was very difficult. And so if you go through life trying to ignore or not deal with, your past will catch up with you. And in this case, post-traumatic stress is, it's taught me a lot. I have to deal with it. I have to every day focus on it. And nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about it. I have colleagues, that would never say anything that they're affected or plagued by mental health issues. And there's just such a stigma around it. There really is. And, from my point of view, it's okay. I have it. I'm not ashamed of it. And I was almost killed and I had lost the other half of me. And yeah, I'm human. I'm human and, and I struggle. And so I think just having that in mind, and having that at the forefront, I have to deal with it is something that, I have to do daily. I have to deal with it daily.
What helped you realize what was going on?
That's a really good question. It's so difficult to find the resources or to know where to go for help. Lucky I have a good support. I have family. I have a good support system. But it's so difficult because most people I know are not going to be running to the doctor saying, help me, I'm suffering from certain symptoms and I'm not really, it's just very difficult by the time you get that help. How far does a person have to spiral down or go down before, what does it look like? How do they get there? It's a very difficult thing. I'm actually doing a mental health film festival and bringing resources down in Palm Beach County, in Delray. We're going to bring resources and documentaries to Delray Beach. And it's all going to be focused on mental health.
When is that?
We're not certain yet. We're trying to do it during Mental Health Awareness Month, but we're not sure. It might be a little soon.
Okay. Are there resources available to Floridians who are experiencing PTSD?
There are resources. It's just very difficult to find. And also, in all honesty, to sit and wait. There's wait lists for mental health counselors, psychologists or psychiatrists. I honestly had to sit on a wait list. It's unbelievable.
What advice would you give to someone who thinks a friend is experiencing PTSD?
Talk to your family members and your friends and your support system and look up you have to look for psychologists or psychiatrists because it's very important you go as soon as possible.
If someone wanted to get involved in helping people in their community suffering from PTSD, what do you recommend?
NAMI. So NAMI is a National Alliance of Mental Health. They're a great organization. They run meetings all throughout the state. Very involved, very helpful, tremendous amount of resources. So look up NAMI Florida or NAMI Palm Beach County or whatever county you're in.
Is that spelled NAMI?
NAMI.
Tell us what your home life was like growing up. You seem very, I'm glad to see you doing well. What was your home life like? You must have an incredible base.
Absolutely. I had a loving mother, loving father, had a twin sister and an older sister. We were just always happy, and I just didn't realize how lucky I was too at that time to have a twin sister going with me everywhere, a built-in best friend.
How did your parents meet?
My parents met on vacation in Sunny Isles, Florida. He was from Chicago and she was in Washington, D.C. She's from Washington, D.C. And they were on vacation in Sunny Isles, Florida. And that's how they met. And then he kept chasing her around.
How would you describe yourself as a child? Did your twin Dory have a similar personality to yours?
Yeah. So with twins and the twin dynamic, there's always like a leader and a follower. And I think at that time I was definitely the follower. She was the leader. She was the older twin, 30 minutes older. And she was definitely more sarcastic. She was very sarcastic, very funny, loved learning. She loved education. Like every day when we came from school, we would just go over the day, what we learned. We'd tell each other because that was like the only time during the day which we were apart. Those few hours during school.
So you had a very similar personality to hers?
Yeah.
Twins can sometimes play pranks on people. Did you and Dory ever trick anyone?
Oh, yes. I mean, we would switch math classes. So, too, I would go and pretend I was her. It was very I just remember, like, them saying, Dory, and I had to, like, look because I wasn't, you're not used to looking when someone's not saying your name. So we would do that. And then also, we got in so much trouble. We decided that it'd be really cool if we were pictured with every group in the yearbook. So what they called, like, the magic club, the debate club, the chorus, every club, we're in the pictures like this. I'm on one side, she's like on the other side.
For our viewers that can't see, you're smiling with your hands on your hips.
Yeah, we got in so much trouble after that. We just thought it'd be so cool to like look at the yearbook and say, we were in all these clubs.
That's a little naughty. I love it. What extracurricular activities were you involved in when you were growing up?
I wasn't in all those clubs, I'll tell you that, although it might look like it. Cheerleading was big. Running.
Where did you attend college and what was your major?
For undergrad, I went to FAU and I majored criminal justice. And for law school, I went to Nova.
What did you do after graduating college?
Initially, after graduating, I became a substitute teacher. I was a substitute teacher, and what I would do is I would take this video that we had made about the accident and the crash, and every class that I would substitute, I would give them the lesson about what happened to me being in the car crash. I felt I had to tell the story. I wanted to save lives. And I saw, like, students sometimes will come to me today and say, I remember you. Because I went to so many different students, go from class to class to class. And I stayed within the high school range because it was when they're driving. I wanted to share my message with the students.
Can you tell us a little bit, I know it's painful, a little bit about the crash so our listeners can know what it is you're so concerned about?
Yeah, so we were 14 years old and the driver was 19 years old. He had a Honda Civic, a 1996 Honda Civic. He put in the backseat of his Civic 7 of us in the backseat. So there was 5 down. I was on a lap, and one of our other friends was on a lap. The driver did put his seatbelt on, and his friend up front put his seatbelt on, and proceeded to drive 90 miles an hour. And while he was driving 90 miles an hour, he wasn't drunk. He wanted to show off for the 7 of us in the back, and started weaving within and out of lanes, trying to pass cars, and just lost control of the car and went head on into another car, which was holding 3 passengers, and they were all wearing their seatbelts. And as a result of the impact, all 7 of us in the back seat fly out the back windshield. except the driver and his friend who were up front wearing their seatbelts, they were fine. Out of the 7 in the back, 5 were dead, including my twin sister. And I was the only walking survivor. My other friend who survived, who is a quadriplegic. And so, I wish I would have said something at that time. I wish I would have said, slow down. I wish we would have been in the backseat wearing our seatbelts, although there were 7 of us in the back. I wish we hadn't overcrowded that car. There's so many things that I wish, I could take back, and I can't. I'll never get her back. And it's not like until something really happens to you, you think you're invincible. You just don't think, especially as a 14-year-old, you don't think anything can happen. It happens in the movies. It happens on TV. It just doesn't happen to me until it happens.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. And now we understand what the message was that you were sharing with those high school students. You went to law school. Can you tell us where you went to law school, and did you enjoy it?
I loved law school. Yeah, I went to Nova Southeastern in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I loved it. I loved the school. I loved the professors. I studied all day. I was in the library all the time, just reading cases.
Did you have a favorite subject or professor?
I did. I had Professor Braccialarghe. He was evidence professor. He's been at the school for a long time. He actually spoke at our graduation. So very, very wise man.
What kind of law do you currently practice?
So right now I'm not practicing. I was doing family and a little bit of employment discrimination, but right now I'm just tutoring for the Florida bar and other subjects as well.
We've just passed the midway point of the 60-day legislative session. What are you hoping to accomplish for the constituents in your district?
Okay, well, there's a bill that is actually coming up on special order today. It's the school bus safety. So this one doubles fines for passing a school bus. It's amazing. Every day, 10,000 drivers illegally pass school buses in our state. Every single day. First of all, it's hard to enforce. Law enforcement has told us about the issue. We've had different testimony from sheriffs. It's important that we punish people who are overtaking school buses. I mean, especially if you're coming on the side where kids are getting off the bus. It's just unbelievable. It's House Bill 37 that's coming up on special order today. And then another good piece of legislation that we're working on is legislation that extends the statute of limitations for sexual assault on somebody under 18. If you don't report it within a certain amount of the time frame, you lose the benefit of the statute of limitations. So we have a bill coming through. We heard powerful testimony in Justice Appropriations on this legislation, and I think this will fix a loophole in our system.
We like to end our show with a little bit of fun. We've talked about some very serious subjects here today, and thank you for being so open and honest about those things. But we do like to end with a little bit of fun by asking all of our guests the same 7 questions. What would people be surprised to know about you?
I use 2 GPSs when I drive places.
Do you get lost a lot?
If I didn't use those 2 GPS, because I have trust issues with 1 GPS.
When you have guests in town, where is your favorite place to take them?
I love taking them to the beach and also the Town Center Mall in Boca Raton.
I have shopped at that mall. I have done some damage at that mall. What is the name of a book you recently read that you could not put down, or the name of a show you enjoyed binge watching?
I just binge watched The Bachelor.
We won't ask any more about that.
But I enjoyed James Pattison for a novel. He has some really good books. James Pattison, some great series.
Among your close family and friends, what are you best known for?
Probably sarcasm. They probably say I'm a little sarcastic.
If you have a nickname, who gave it to you?
Nickname is Emmy and my mom.
If you knew you could not fail, what would you attempt?
It's a good question. That's a really good question. Getting hands-free Florida passed.
What are the top 3 things you love about living in Florida?
I love the weather. I love the ocean. And did I say weather? Oh, I said that, yeah. Weather, ocean, and all of our state parks.
Representative Slosberg, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me.
Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. For more information on our show, please visit us on our website, thefloridaville.com. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Instagram and Twitter so that you can learn more about upcoming episodes. We would love to hear your feedback and ideas for future episodes, so be sure to email us. Our email address is feedback@thefloridaville.com. This episode was edited by Joy Tootle with the team at Rocket Ship Consultants. Thank you for listening.